Let's introduce ourselves. My name is Matt Lee, and I couldn't see how many of you rose your hand, but for those of you that don't know my backstory, I am a recovering MSP. Thank you. I started when it was 7 of us, just under $1 million in revenue. Was there as we grew it to 1 to 3, 3 to 5, 5 to 6, 6 to 7, 7 to merge with 3 others to be about 21 million, and then ultimately grew that to 40 million and exited at 14 times EBITDA, and then so second time at 620 million and 18 times EBITDA. But that's not why I'm up here talking. I'm up here talking because of my PTSD. Unfortunately, during the time that I was in charge of the security team at our MSP when we were about 21 million, we bought a small company I call Voldemort. And the reason is I'll never say their real name again. I actually heard it the other day and it freaked me out. But we had that company. Basically, we lost $3 million on a $1 million acquisition because of a threat actor named Soda no Kibi, or R-Evil, or Revel. Ransomware gang, if you want to talk to me about that on the boat tonight, you can probably get me to cry. So we'll do that. Jason, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. My name is Jason Slagle. I run an MSP in the Toledo, Ohio area. I've been doing the security thing for a bit, all the way back to the IRC days. So I have a lot of PTSD too, just different brand of PTSD. I'm beaten in. He is the optimist generally in our conversations, and I am the cynic. Although as we hang out more, we both
unfortunate. Yeah, you'll see a slide about that later. Actually.
Next slide.
So we're going to start with just kind of talking about before the hackening, what each of our kind of backgrounds and expertise is in red teaming. How many of you have done any type of offensive security type training on your own, learning things, how to hack? Raise your hands. Awesome. Very good. A good bit. Of course, yes, Wes. And I focused on identity. So most of my background is in identity. I've been running Evil Jinx since, I think, 1 or 2, version 2, bless you. Anybody know Evil Jinx, what that tool is? Okay, 1, 2, well, Dan, yeah, of course. 3.
You've probably come across it. You just don't know what it's called.
That is true. This is how I would steal a token from you if you do not have FIDO-based protection on your tokens. And so my background's really in the manipulation of that, between Evil Jinx, enumeration, MSOL spray, spraying against Microsoft Cloud, things like Graph Runner. Those are really my background. So I would say I'm very identity-centric, not very vulnerability-centric, if that makes sense.
And that is the opposite of me. I am very vulnerability-heavy. I do a lot of binary analysis, do a lot of reverse engineering. I kind of came to being known in the space because in 2020, for 6 weeks, I could have taken over any Automate server on the internet. I had a 9.8 CVE against Automate, and continue to do stuff. I've been involved. The Huntress Log4Shell tester thing they wrote, I was one of the contributors to that. I did some of the research with them that got released about the slash and grab stuff for ConnectWise, and I don't know. My expertise is mostly on the vulnerability side.
Also want to call out a few very important people to us that helped out with this project, and we'll explain what this project was a little more. My lovely wife, Kat, in the front, did a lot of the open source intelligence work and the OSINT gathering, data reporting. Tom Lawrence, just for the sweet dank memes, because that's what Tom does. And then actually he also gave us a pretty sweet access to a Linode instance that gave us the ability to spray with millions of IPv6 addresses. So that was nice. And then John Hammond, spirit animal, but also helped us out with some dark web data and things as we needed to. Also calling out, if you want, PlexTrack.
Yeah, PlexTrack is a reporting tool tend to be used by security companies. We use it internally to write our security assessment reports. We reached out to them, or I reached out to them. They were kind enough to basically give us an instance to use for this. It's still up to the state, so we still have one.
We'll be using it later. Also Huntress for the dark web data. And then I kind of realized this. I don't say thank you enough to Pax8. I even tease and say that Pax8 sponsors my breakfast, lunches, and dinners. But Pax8 is a company that allowed me to spend about 450 hours on this project for just the betterment of the community. So we didn't used to have the Pax8 logo on here, but I kind of thought about it a minute. I'm like, I work for somebody that lets me just spend a few hundred hours trying to make this place a little better. So thank you to Pax8 as well there. How'd this happen, Jason?
Yeah, so about two and a half years ago, we were at ChannelCon together, and the weather was kind of crappy. It was March, and so it was August, but one of the speakers couldn't make it. And so with about 45 minutes notice, the people that run ChannelCon come up to Matt and I, and they're like, we have a talk in the schedule titled How I Would Hack You. Can you guys deliver it in 45 minutes? And we're like, sure. Yeah, we'll figure it out. We went through it. We only made like 5 slides. We spent the whole time basically, we'd pick on somebody in the audience. They'd raise their hand. They'd give us their domain name, and we would tell them how we would hack them. And we kind of went through it. We gave the talk several more times. I think we've given it 3 times now. And then last year at Secure, when we gave it, we got drunk and we said, what if we really did it?
Yeah. That's literally exactly how it started. It was, maybe we should actually do this. And it really quickly went into, we ought to talk to our attorney. I'm not kidding. That literally was the first call. Can we talk to our attorney and can we see if we can make this work legally? All right. So why do we do it, Jason?
We did this because Matt and I, on top of being in a lot of the MSP shows, we hang around the security crowd too, right? So we go to like the Wild West Hacking Fest, or he spoke at RSA this year. We go to GurCon, we go to B-Sides, we go to the hacker conferences. Hackers hate MSPs. They hate them. All the red team and security companies, they think we're terrible. They think we're awful people. They think we do an absolutely terrible job. Right, so part of the reason that we wanted to do this is that true? Is it true that MSPs do suck?
Do they protect their own house? Yeah. Do they actually do these things? And a lot of the time that's what's being talked about in these security communities is they just don't care. MSPs suck. They just don't care. And so we did this as a way to do a data gathering project, essentially, and see, of those self-selected, of the ones that said, I'll sign up, right? How did they look? Like, what did they look like in that regard?
So, yeah, we put out a couple of LinkedIn posts, right? Like both memes. Who here's active on LinkedIn? Who here's noticed that memes or shit posting get the most impressions out of anything?
A long margin.
Like the posts that I do where I'm punching some vendor in the nose get like tons of engagement, and memes do too. So.
Anybody know who this is, by the way?
Never seen him shady.
He looks super shady. That's Kyle Hanslevin actually pretending to be me one time on a Hunter's Hackett that we were on together. So I snagged a copy of it. I now use it all over the place. All right. So why do you think they signed up? Let me ask you, and I really would like some audience participation. If you were offered a free penetration test against your organization, what would be the reason you would do it? And don't just say free. What? To test your perimeters? Anybody else? I love it. To know where my gaps are at. What else? To get budget? Bro, I love you so much. That is the most honest CISO answer I've ever heard in my life. Yeah, and so we kind of wanted to know why they signed up too, so we actually made them answer that as part of the request to see if we would select them. And here's some of them. I'm a large MSP that recently switched RMM solutions and removal of AD as IDP, identity provider. Would be nice to test again. I love that reason. I'm literally in love with that reason. Okay, 100% Microsoft Cloud infrastructure, no legacy on-prem or RMM. This could be fun as the answer is modern really better. Again, wonderful reason, great thought process, love you. We're a small, medium-sized MSP focused on SMB, primarily in blank. Sorry, I had to redact a lot. You're going to see the lot redacted in here. We apologize. Our focus has been increasing on improving security for our clients. We've never done an official pen test on our own infrastructure. How many of you have done a pen test on your own infrastructure that you've paid more than $5,000 for? Okay, very good. And ownership teams recognize the importance of our own security. Again, back to my man over here for the budget aspect. Another one, mid-largest, 20,000 workstations have taken steps to reduce attack surface, and lab tech refused to call it automate. MSP Geek, Lurker, right, all of those things. Want to see how they respond.
That one's weird.
Okay.
Yeah. How do they, like...
If we were to compromise the network. My gut says they were thinking malware or even identity if they have identity extensibilities. I thought through that one too. Yeah. That one I had to chew on. Let's go to some I don't know that I love. I won't give them a frowny face, but I'll give them a meh face. Okay. Large SOC 2 compliant platform. Would love to connect and see what you guys could turn up that our previous tests and audits didn't. Johnny foreshadowing.
Yeah. SOC 2, who here has to deal with SOC 2? Is anyone actually SOC 2?
Okay.
Does anyone here consume SOC 2 reports? The only place I look is exclusions because that's where the bodies are buried.
Yeah. And definitely scoping can matter, and I'll show you what that means here in a minute. And the last one down here, I've always wanted to do something like this. I really think some of our stack may have undisclosed. That's really what gets us. It's not the basic and stupid things we do every day. It's always our vendors. It's always somebody else.
80% of MSP breaches are credential misuse.
And Jason didn't add this earlier. When we talked about why do we want to do this, we are also head of the emergency response team. How many of you know about MSP911.org? Nobody. Sorry, we're getting it started. Few people. We are kind of coaches. If you're ever in your worst day, go to msp911.org and please fill out the form. We will start an incident that we will work with you in our incident exigence platform and help guide you through your worst day. Everybody that's on that team has suffered that. And now we've seen one MSP go out of business in the last year. We've had 17 cases. And so we wanted to see how bad it really was, is kind of what part of it was too. So we didn't cover that. How many of you are CIS practitioners? Center for Internet Security, Critical Controls. Okay. How many NIST CSF? How many not using a framework at all? Please. Okay. Then there's other ones I don't know about. There's a lot of people missing. This is CIS 18.1. 18.1 ascribes that you should do a penetration test against your organization commensurate with the size of your organization and or maturity and complexity of your organization. So the reason to do a pen test is in CIS safeguards to say this is the next step. Now, it's 18.1. 18 doesn't happen until the second implementation group, meaning this is something you do after you get a lot of the other things in place that you have to protect yourself. So that's what's driving it. And so we're going to keep giving you takeaways as we come through this.
Yep. Yeah, and I mean, this one, right, like the biggest takeaway here is you need to be doing something. What most MSPs don't do is they don't treat themselves like an enterprise that has the number of endpoints totally under your management, right? So if you have 1,500 endpoints, you need to treat yourself like a company that has 1,500 endpoints, and you need to protect yourself in that way because that's what you are.
Jason and I are also part of Trustmark with CompTIA or GTIA. Oh, I got to buy a shot for that one.
Yep.
GTIA. And Trustmark, when we were going through this and trying to establish what is the baseline risk of an MSP, we had two primary candidates in our discussion point. One was that they were the high watermark of the riskiest client, meaning like if you're treating with somebody that does nuclear or something in that nature, then that's the highest risk. You need to be equivalent to their capabilities, right? So that's one way we figured it out. The other way we decided to talk about it was you're the summation of your client's risk to some extent. And that's what we actually landed on. What I mean is if you have admin credentials to everything and admin to the tools, security tools and access to respond to the security team and the ability to, then I'm just going to destroy you. And I'm going to get each of your clients, and therefore each of them will be suing you. And if you want to know more about that, I can talk to you about the 18 months of my life being sued by clients until they all fired us and every employee quit. So we can talk about that. But if you're not doing pen testing in any way for yourself, find a way to do that. And we're hoping by the end of this talk, we'll share what that looks like and what we're trying to do to make that easier and more affordable for you. Okay.
So, yeah, we got Brad Gross. He was wonderful. We should put him on the thank yous. We got him to write us a legal agreement that we floated in front of these MSPs, and it was dumb. Like, it was so egregiously in our favor. We capped our liability to $100. We provided no scope, and the only thing that we have to eventually do is deliver reports.
I love that you said eventually. That just proves that we haven't done the reports yet. Like, thanks for just calling us out right now. No, you're not wrong.
We got one done.
Yeah. At one point when I was talking to the attorney, I said, I want this to be so bad nobody signs this. I want this that if any attorney reads this, nobody signs this. And it was intentional. We were in some ways also testing that posture and that risk appetite for MSPs, right? So this is a very data gathering project.
And as it turns out, I mean, we're relatively well known in the space, right? So the MSP is willing to sign up. I think there's probably a level.
There's a certain amount of that there, yeah. But it was definitely.
But we would definitely take a picture of their unlocked laptop and shame them.
You're not wrong. Yeah, I've done it a number of times. All right. So takeaway number 2. I think that make sure when you're looking at contracts you sign with your vendors, with any supplier, as you go down this path, look at them. Make sure they make sense for you. Make sure the risk makes sense. Now, some of them you can't do anything about, right? ConnectWise, redlining with ConnectWise, I think it took me a year with my attorney and their attorney to get them to redline, and I was spending $2 million with them, right? So it's really hard to get contracts in your favor. But when you look at CIS 15, CIS 15 does talk about including security requirements and other things in your contracts and trying to say, hey, how do I protect myself as an organization? And this is one of the things. So takeaway number 2 is 26 out of 62 that signed up, 59% didn't sign. They looked at it and said, no.
I think some amount of it was just laziness, though, because we only had what, 4?
4 called us back.
Yeah.
4 called us back and said, could we redline this?
Yeah.
Want to add these things in? We're like, no, we're not. This was a test. You passed. Okay, so good. All right. Part of the challenge, and this didn't know giggles? Gosh, y'all.
Some giggles.
Couple giggles. Okay. That's a Tom Lawrence dank meme, by the way. I've used this at RSA too. This was a wonderful one. Okay, so the challenge in our world, if I wanted to go be a Series 7 registered broker-dealer or broker at a broker-dealer, I must register with FINRA, put in my FBI fingerprint card with 5 copies of it, go and take a test that is a 6.5-hour test that if I fail, I can't take it again for 3 months. After I pass that, I have to get my 66 and my blue sky laws. Those blue sky laws allow me to go now appoint myself at a broker-dealer. And now if I'm at a broker-dealer, I can work there. And if I do bad things, the broker-dealer tells on me, and I get fired, and I lose my license. And if they do bad things, I tell on them, and they lose their license. If you want to be a doctor, you have the AMA. If you want to be a dentist, ADA. If you want to be a CPA, AICPA. All of those things have self-regulatory barriers to entry. My biggest LinkedIn post to date, well, CrowdStrike really helped me out, but my biggest LinkedIn post before CrowdStrike crashing everything was like 275,000 interactions, likes. And it was literally a sticky note that said MSP that I put on a piece of glass on the front of a screen and said, I'm an MSP now. And it really resonated with people that's why y'all hate the trunk slamming conversation. That's why the people you say, well, I can't believe you charge $40 a head. Because they're not all equal. Everything's not the same. And so we're in a world where there's no regulation, no barrier to entry, and anybody that wants to be an MSP can just go get a business license and be an MSP. I don't think that lasts forever. I don't think it can. But anything to add on this?
Yeah, no, I agree with all that. I think that if something doesn't change, part of the reason we do this is I think if something doesn't change and we can't fix this ourselves, the government will definitely come try to fix it, and they will fuck it up. Like, they do not understand technology. Like I'm a member of the CISA's Joint Cyber Defense Collaborative or whatever they call it, JCDC. I was at a meeting in Washington, and they had us like redlining reports that CISA was about to release, and they gave this report, and it was talking about Screen Connect as an RMM tool. And I literally took a red pen and I like X'd the entire report, and I said this entire thing is garbage. Like it needs to go. They don't get it, right? Yeah. We did finally get them. Like that meeting is the reason they now call them remote access tools, because previously they were calling them RMM.
I always called it remote access Trojan, but
yeah,
whatever. Okay, very good. So some of these stats, if you don't mind, Jason.
Yep. So the real problem here is not that MSPs suck in general. The real problem is that the businesses they serve don't have any money, right? Like if you look at it, something like it says right there, like 98% of companies that exist have less than 100 employees. And that's 98% of the companies that have some employees have less than 100. Something like 90% of companies are under $500,000 a year in revenue.
And if you do 7 times 5, that's $35,000 a year. That's $35,000 a year they spend on all
IT.
Tech.
All tech.
That's the laptop, that's the printer, that's all of it, right? And so when you think about this, when I use this slide's also made it to like 9 talks now. But when I used this at RSA, I was trying to set the stage that how else would they do this? Like I put up on there, I said, well, what could you buy with $35,000? Like 1 Splunk instance? Like a VMware license, right? Or half a college kid for a year. So the problem is that's what MSPs are. We're an economy of scale. We bring in efficiencies that allow this to happen at scale. We are what helps solve this. Jason and I did a talk at GERCON called MSPs Suck, but the world without them is much worse. And we were trying to explain that is the solve. You are the solve. And if we can make that better, then 43% of our GDP in the United States and globally is now better. SMB is 43% of the United States GDP last I looked.
And that was the challenge we were making to the security people, is that do we MSPs suck because they're not great, or do they suck to you because they can't afford you? It's probably the latter one. They're mad because they don't get any business from MSPs, but they constantly get defer and cases after their clients have been popped.
All right. So takeaway 3, you're not the problem, but you do need to work with your clients to ensure you're maximizing, that they're doing the things that are inside your standards, that meet your risk tolerance and their risk tolerance, right? Those are the things that need to happen. And there's a risk-reward equation. I think Jason put this up here just to bother me. But I had a CISO tell me recently, Matt, no companies really go out of business from making bad cyber decisions. It's really not all that bad.
He's not wrong.
And he's not wrong. I can only really cite one. 23andMe is the only one that I can really come out and say definitely died from their cyber event. But really after that, most people just kind of get through it. And so the reward as a business is to not give a shit. Like it's unfortunate.
And one of the other takeaways here, how many people, like raise your hand if you have a dialed in ICP as far as client size goes.
Ideal client profile.
Ideal client profile. Right? Like one of the biggest reasons to me to have a range, like a defined size you work with, is you can tune your security stack to that size of customer. Right? The risk of that $500,000 a year customer,
Bless you.
if you don't know this, the ransomware threat actors will demand between 3 and 10% of revenue as the ransom. How do they know how much you make? They have all your data.
Yeah. And it was nice you
They
leave
get
that
it from your
insurance
P&L.
policy on your desktop. That really helped out, too.
They get it from your
That makes-
P&L. They know how much money you make, right? But like the reward for popping a $500,000 a year company at 3% of revenue is what, $15K, right? It's like the reward's not there, so they're not going to spend any time. So if you're serving all really micro clients, then you don't need a lot of security. I would make the argument that if you do something like business premium, layer on some like reasonable SIM solution, and turn an MFA on everywhere, you've now made it
And an identity solution.
Yeah, and you've made it hard enough now that most threat actors are going to move on, right? You've locked the screen door,
Especially for the revenue reward ratio, right? Like if it's not that much revenue and they land and it's hard, not going to stay. If they get a Citrix cred for a Cisco employee, we're going to hang around a minute.
Yeah, I mean the opposite end of that is if you're servicing 1,000 user clients, right, with millions of dollars a year in revenue, the ransom is going to be huge, and those threat actors are willing to spend a lot more time there. So you need a lot more defense in depth.
Yep. All right, let's get some high level stats, Jason. What do we have in this project?
Yep. So we had 62 MSPs showed interest. They were in 5 countries. We immediately eliminated anyone that wasn't in the United States because we figure contract law has to be less, like, it won't allow us to do as stupid as we did probably in other countries. We were afraid of it.
Throw out the whole document, not just the part we asked them to throw out, right? If we ever got
we had very small MSPs up to a couple of very large platform or master MSPs.
3.
Same thing, employee sizes. 26 of them signed our legal agreement. 4 of them came back. I think two of them came back and said, "There's no way I'm signing this." And 2 of them came back and asked for red lines. We told them to go away. We actually targeted 7 of them and spent. Matt came to my place. We spent
2 days together, but I don't know. I mean, the OSINT gathering.
Yeah, it was forever.
Months of work,
and then the actual active popping. I think those were long days.
Those were long days.
We were not stopping.
Yeah, that was fun. But let's get a little bit more into it. So, what did we do next?
Right. Go.
How many of you have a Fastly or Cloudflare WAF in front of every publicly exposed thing you own? Okay. Good. Couple. How many of you still have Active Directory on premise? All right. Awesome. How many of you expose all your tools on your websites? Or don't think you do? I'll tell you why later. How many of you put client testimonials on your website? Because the marketing guy said to. He's right. Makes it easy for me to figure out who to target, though. All right. I now know who to impersonate when I want to call in as an executive. All right. What did we do? One of the things that was, thank you. This is our hacker trap because Jason and I switched roles. I wanted to learn things I didn't know. And so when we actually went active in this process, I didn't do the identity attacks. I stood up the infrastructure and stood it up so we could protect it. But I didn't do the identity attacks. I focused on the vulnerabilities. I focused on the things I suck at. And
you focused on a Zyzel for a long time.
About 6 hours. I was trying to knock over a Zyzel modem that had a perfect 9.8 vulnerability. It just wasn't working. It was already either patched or it was a different device.
And I went identity, right? Like I don't do a lot with that, right? So I got to use and learn a lot of the tools like Trevor Spray. We used MSOL Spray. We didn't actually get to play with GraphRunner.
We did not use GraphRunner in
Yeah.
production. That's correct.
And I did a bunch of other OSINT data gathering, and basically I was trying to attack the identity layer.
Yep. How many of you know how you would start to even figure out what to attack? When we talk about OSINT, does anybody know what that means, or should I demystify it just a smidge? So open source intelligence just means anything you've given me, I'm going to beat you to death with it. And what it comes down to is all the places like websites and information you've had on the dark web, or even domain names that you've used and put in your Microsoft tenant, or made an A record with an SPF record or a text record with an SPF that had IP addresses in it and blocks in it and had references to other domain names. We could go through and do discernment on that and see, do they own that? Is that theirs? Right? But you also have to sort out the stuff that's like cloud stuff. I don't want to attack the cloud stuff. I need to attack your stuff, the things you own. right? So open source intelligence gathering is the first step for me. And it can be a very long step, right? Because it goes into enumeration. It goes into trying to find out what all's there. Speaking of which, oh, look at us. It's like we planned this or something, right? So one of the first steps is enumeration. This is just going in and grabbing as much data as you can to understand the victim, to understand what you're going to do and who you're going to attack. For example, if I wanted to go look at companies someone's bought, perhaps I go to ConnectWise's and I say, here's all the domains that they have under that same tenant.
Did anyone know you could do this?
Carver. Did you know you can do this? Dump all domains? One does?
Yeah.
There's a number of ways to do it.
AAD internals, OSINT, just Google that, and it'll take you to a web form. You just type in a domain name, and it will give you all the... It's one of the ways we figured out things Kaseya's bought before they announced them.
And since Jason was going to say this... You're not wrong. You're not wrong. When you think about it, this enumeration and learning what you have is useful for you too internally, right? Look and see what your footprint looks like. Look and try to understand what you have out there that's known. And I'll tell you that, well, we'll hold this for a bit. It's coming. We'll talk about the ConnectWise thing in a little bit.
I mean, they're also, right, like, I will now take those domains. I have other open source tools. I use a tool called Bbot. We use tools like Security Trails and DNS Dumpster.
Yeah, go get a Security Trails account. They're free.
Yeah.
You should definitely have Security Trails.
Shodan, like those are all tools that red teamers tend to use, and we're looking for attack footprint, right? So we're looking for any IP addresses that might be associated with you. If we find two that are in the same net block, we assume you own the net block.
Math. Yeah. I can do a /24. Yeah. I can do a /16. I can figure this out. Which we did find one. The other thing that can be useful in these is taking and discerning other things, right? For example, like there's this Purge Security. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of this one down there, but it's a trash product. I mean, I'm just kidding. And then obviously they use Code 2, right? So they're doing email signature with Code 2. That might matter, right? I might find something to abuse there. In this case, I don't think there'd be much from Code 2, but it's things like that I'll be able to discern. If I see your MS equals blank, 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 Microsoft. If I see Google G, okay, that's a Google. And right, we can start figuring out those things. And so sometimes remember to clean up your DNS records. But even if you do, I can look at history. It doesn't matter.
The other thing is we'll go to any certificate you've ever bought. Like we can look those up. We'll go to your website. We went to your websites and 100% of people put their client login portal on their website, so we can figure out what PSA you use because it probably goes to your PSA. We can do a little bit of work and probably figure out what RMM you're using.
It's not hard.
Yeah. Nope.
And it's these things of me trying to get context about you. That's the intention of it. I need context. I want to know what I'm attacking. All right. Next, enumeration. Spreadsheet with OSINT.
Yeah.
This is some of the OSINT we were able to share with you. I have a couple of I agrees, a couple of USAs, a couple of things.
We did tell them we would not publicly name who they were.
Yeah. We actually, when we started this project, we started with an Excel sheet. Right? We started with something like this where we just kept gathering more and more, and I guess it was a Google sheet, fine. And we kept expanding more and more and more and more, what other things we had about them, what notes we had about them, what information we had about them, what domain names they had, what IP4 addresses they had, all of those type of things. Who are their employees? What are the email addresses we know that are valid? That kind of stuff is what we're starting to fill these out with. Just we had one place to go and filter for as we started to pick our victims. And most of this was really during the time that we were just trying to decide who to attack. Gathering this information, we were trying to find the low-hanging fruit, right? We were trying to find the ones that we thought we could get some wins in.
After a while, that fell apart. You've ever worked with an Excel spreadsheet that's got the columns go all the way up to BD or something like that? It's not fun. So we reached out to PlexTrack. Again, PlexTrack's a reporting tool. We started importing those findings from the Google spreadsheet into PlexTrack. Eventually, we'll use them to deliver reports.
Yeah. We even tagged. One of the cool things about PlexTrack is you can make tags. So I could come here and say, I want the ones with no agreement signed. I want the ones that have Microsoft. I want the ones that are using Proofpoint. That way, if I was doing a larger scale attack and I wanted to emulate Proofpoint, I could just do all the ones that are Proofpoint really easily, right? So,
and to be fair, we definitely did OSINT on ones that didn't sign an agreement. We just didn't do any active probing or attacks.
Yeah. And for anybody that kind of wants to know the barrier, that's where they draw the line and go into jail. So we're good. You can do all the OSINT you want. It's open source. You put it out there and gave it to me. It's not my fault. Right? So really active touching is where you can get into trouble. Right? So that's why we waited till we had agreements for those. But yeah. All right. There's a lot of tools out there. Right? One of the things that we got into is I have a little bit of ADHD.
A lot of ADHD.
And so there's so many ways I can go do things. There's so many different things we can go play with and end up working with. And we're going to come back to this, but there's a real value in learning these tools. Jason and his team had believed before our event that there was no way to steal their token based on their conditional access policies.
Yes, because if you read the Microsoft documentation, it leads you to believe that's the case.
I'd already learned this one. You remember the little box that says don't allow persistent sessions? Yeah? Everybody check that because it makes you feel good and the session won't be persistent. If the session never closes, it's still not closed. So the persistence is only once you close it. But if I don't close the session, it doesn't close. And so EvilGenix doesn't close the session. When I steal the token in the middle, it leaves the session open. And even though you might disconnect, my server has not, right? My server hasn't sent that command. And so my token is still valid.
It lowers the amount of time you have to do your stuff, right? So it makes it a little harder to gather, bulk, and collect.
No, the persistent doesn't, but setting a timeline does.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. But remember, it's a refresh token. I can refresh it again.
Correct. Who here uses conditional access at all? Okay, are you EID P1 or P2? Who's P1? Who's P2? Oh, okay.
Very good. Well, you already got one of our takeaways. You get MAT points today. They're not transferable. They're not worth anything. But yeah. So I encourage you to start learning these tools because you'll understand. As we tested, and what's great is I love Jason's security posture because his service manager created a new account to let me try to steal. Like, he didn't even let me use his daily driver. I was like, man, I'm impressed. This guy gets it. Yeah.
You broke his brain.
I did. I stole that token.
We were very drunk at the time.
Yeah, it did help.
Yeah.
Magic's easier when everybody's drunk.
Yeah.
Right? But no, I tease. But using these tools can be really, really impactful and help you understand how your clients are getting pwned and how you can lose. How many of you know about device code flows? Who's heard of a device code flow? Who's heard of a tool called Graph Runner? It's written by Bo Bullock or Daft Hack. Bo basically combines several of his pieces to build a toolkit that lets me send you a link to go to Microsoft.com/device logon. Hard to filter those out unless you're like specifically filtered out, but they're not going to filter the Microsoft domain. Right? And all you do is go there. I give you a code to put in. Anybody signed in with Netflix by putting in a code on your phone? Okay. That's exactly what this is.
Same thing.
Exact same thing. It generates an OAuth token that's a primary refresh token. It makes it a device, essentially. So I don't even necessarily have to fish you with a domain you can go catch. I can fish you with Microsoft and social engineering. So, yeah.
And there are legitimate uses for it. I'm doing some software development right now, and one of the things I'm doing is integrating with Microsoft Authentication Library, and that is how you do it to start out. Like, that is when you're doing development, that is a legitimate use case for it.
So we started some identity attacks. And actually, I just want to go back, though. There's a takeaway I didn't put in here. If you are not using device code flows, go to your conditional access and make a deny policy for them.
Yes.
And then it won't be your problem. But once I do have Graph Runner, I can search for emails. I can exfil emails. I can put in other enterprise applications that allow me to get the rest of your users in your environment as well from an internal application. It doesn't have to be a partner to do that.
The default permission set for a lot of these tools is way over permissive.
Yeah, for sure. So we'll come back to this, but tools help us do what we do. One of the cool ones, Black Lantern makes a lot of stuff, but Trevor Spray 2.0 was one of the biggest ones we used throughout this. And there's a couple reasons for it. One of them is that Trevor Spray allows you to combine 3 or 4 other hackers' tools to make it so much easier as a kit to do several things. One of those is enumeration. I can just type in -- recon, and I can put in your domain name, and it will enumerate your OWA endpoints. It'll enumerate if you do have on-premise Active Directory based on the Exchange data that's being responded to. It'll tell me a lot of things I need to understand contextually, but it's also really good at figuring out all your users. It's got a really dope method of figuring out users without you being able to trace it. What it does is it looks for a web page on OWA, or
OneDrive.
OneDrive. That's the O I was looking for. OneDrive. And it checks a username, matt.lee@pax8.
Yeah, it'd be matt.lee-my.sharepoint.com.
Right. And so what that ends up doing is if we get a 403 that says, or a 404 says this doesn't exist, then we know that's not a username. If we get a 401 unauthorized that says you need to sign in, then we know that that's a valid username and we can start attacking it. And so there's these enumeration methods that we can use to do that with these tools.
And by the way, that is 100% unlogged. There is no way to log it that we're aware of, and there's no way to turn it off.
That's correct. It is just me finding your username. So if you thought you could hide your users, you can't. Not easily. We'll talk about in a minute how you can help yourself. So we started doing identity attacks, but I want to say we also started realizing that we may not continue to do the identity attacks. I don't know if we want to speak about this
Yeah,
here.
there's a couple of things. One, because of who we are and who signed up, we felt like we could probably social engineer people into hitting our phishing link, but we felt like it was cheating a little bit. The second thing is, while the MSP had signed our legal agreement, some of their cloud providers probably had not, and we were a little wary of crossing that line without some specific scoping into the agreement. So we
Especially
started,
IaaS ones.
and additionally, we stood up infrastructure and got it shut down multiple times while we were trying to
Microsoft's
get
really
they're,
quick if
they're
you make
detecting
mistakes.
it well
Yeah,
now.
They're really good at it. In fact, April 1st, Microsoft made one of the most significant changes of late to try to protect against identity token theft by adding 4 or 5 new callback domains that start to send the domain of the referring party to them. So if I came from howiwouldhackyou.com to Microsoft, they go, oh, that's probably an in the middle. Let's just go burn howiwouldhackyou.com. I think we lost 3 domains through this. But we learned how to get around that, changing some of the proxies, adding in other proxies between that proxy, like AWS was helpful, or in Cloudflare. Yeah. Okay. Very good. Bless you. What did we find, Jason?
Oh, yeah, we found a lot. There are dumpster fires. There was a lot of good, but a lot of bad too, right? Like we found a lot of companies didn't. Yeah, go to the next slide.
And remember, these were the self-selected ones that said, I'm good enough to go get a pen test, right? So these were the ones that were already probably in the top of the top that agreed to do this, or at least believed they were, from a security posture.
We weren't detected
Not
generally.
once. Well, once.
Well, once.
But we'll get back to that.
There is a large platform MSP that we believe has about 300 employees. At one point, we had 46 of their accounts locked out.
That means with passwords, not MFA bypassed. We had them locked out. We actually ended up finding an LDAP-S endpoint that was running of an old client portal and an employee portal, and so it let us get around the Microsoft Smart Lockouts.
Yeah, we started spraying that instead.
Yep.
A little bit. Yeah, so we had, and we tested, right? We were using IPv6 space, so every single one of our requests came from a new IP. And so Smart Lockout wasn't locking these accounts out anyways, but we tested it and they were locked. They were hard locked. Somebody had to go and lock them, or the timeout had to expire.
And nobody said anything. And these people knew they're under a pen test, right? And nobody said anything in that case. And so one of the things that was surprising is that we didn't really get much callback. There was a fun one, though. 80% of these that we studied used Entra ID as a primary identity source, right? Remember with the Trevor spray, I can enumerate whether you have an Active Directory and an Exchange server behind it for hybridization. 45% used Cloudflare Fastly. Does anybody know why I would want to use that? Does anybody want to know why we'd want to use a web application firewall or a WAF? Dan? Denial of service. That's one reason. Anybody else? Yes, sir?
Just better layer, layer 7, checking if they
Yeah.
one more layer.
Yeah, I can now do stuff to say, hey, maybe we shouldn't let you put a slash after a... Never mind. Sorry, I digress. But yeah, having those also does something else. What else does it do for us, Jason?
It provides some attack filtering in theory, right? So it does that. It also provides an additional level of logging.
Yep.
Right. Access control, rate limiting, right?
Yep.
Things that a lot of these tools don't have built into them, you can do with the proxy.
But there's one I'm really looking for, which is hiding the origin server.
Yes.
When you are doing this with a Cloudflare, you can hide your origin server, where that server actually lives, the IP address that if I was wanting to bypass your Cloudflare, I could just go to the IP if you don't have a firewall stopping it, right? So it's also to hide that origin server. Most of the MSPs we found didn't succeed at doing that. They had leaks
Only
or
one.
mistakes.
Only one were we not able to find the origin servers.
Yep. 100% made it simple to determine their tool stacks. There's sometimes not much way around that, unfortunately, right? You have to have a cloud portal for your clients. You have to have, so those things are going to be there. 100% have subdomains to enumerate. Everybody has subdomains. How many of you have subdomains? Okay, we all do. How many of you use your subdomains to make client office labels? This client name .mike.com makes it really easy to figure out all those IPs of your clients, right? Because now I can just enumerate those with word lists. Or even just DNS records, historic reflexive DNS records. Okay, so 32% had exposed IPs of hosts in their SPF records, right? Like that server used to be your Exchange server, but you just left it in your SPF record and you didn't remove it, and so now I know you still have some infrastructure I can go get to, especially in the AD-based ones. 55% list employees on their website. Again, I can enumerate those employees anyway. It's not as big of a deal, but
Well, there's positives and negatives of that, right? It's a way for your clients to verify that the person they're calling works there, but it's a way for the threat actor to know who to pretend to be when the client call the client, right? So
yeah. And then the same thing on the other side of that, 58% list their clients on their website. And it's to get the testimonials, right? But if I wanted to attack and get low-hanging, easy fruit, I would probably just call in as one of your clients and ask for a password reset, right? That's probably what I would do. And if I can gather enough information about it and you don't have some validation methodology, then I'd probably get a reset.
Or if I determine you use TeamViewer, maybe I'm getting you to connect to my PC and I'm trying to reverse the session. There are plenty of ways to try to naughty there.
All right. More of these stats. We had a total of 376 hosts that we were able to find, right? Critical vulns, 58. So there were 58 criticals on those. 373 highs. Okay. It might turn out that if you forget about infrastructure, it doesn't get patched. It's funny how that works. 29% use Cloudflare, 74% list clients. We already covered that, so okay, sorry about that. This takeaway was what we had here. One single MSP had 62% of those hosts and probably of those vulnerabilities as well. Why do we think that is? Anybody? How many of you are buying companies right now? Okay. And I'm not calling you out because I love you.
Kind of do
and you know
something
where we're
different.
coming.
Yeah.
But if you're buying companies and you're not dealing with their current infrastructure and their current security posture, you're going to build up a lot of this type of attack surface, right? And so what we found was, again, that one had bought several companies over the last few years, and those companies just were never torn down. They were, in fact, integrated to their new infrastructure. They brought the LDAP host over to the Microsoft endpoint and let us spray against it, right?
Yeah, if you have a thing that says "Go here for old portal," and then on that page,
and it says "Go here for even older portal," it was dope.
You're probably doing
no,
it
not
wrong.
this portal, the other one. No, the one before that. Oh, you 3 acquisitions ago. My bad, bro. Yeah, it's rough. It's rough. Jason?
Yeah, so, going on that, this is this is 4 different acquisitions they made, and basically the high-level output of the data we had
This
from
was them.
Yeah.
This was each of their acquisitions.
It's not great. Obviously, we had to redact it, but
And these are my SOC 2. This
Yeah.
was the one that
Yes.
said, we want to see what you find. They didn't.
Yes.
Everything you excluded from your stupid SOC 2.
well, it's everything they didn't scope into their previous SOC 2 or their pen test.
Exactly. All right, takeaway number 4. M&A needs special attention. And I did call out my friend in the front over here. But they take it as an approach of each one's an island. We look at them, we protect them, and at least if one gets popped, we don't get completely popped. I don't disagree with that as a methodology. And the real takeaway, in my opinion, is I don't give a crap which way you solve it. Solve it. If you're going to buy something and you're going to kill it, then do it. My story, when I was, and this is the first time I thought I was going to be fired in my new role. I was at Continuum with Tony Miller, my VP of operations, my boss. I just signed in as the director of security for this organization. And it was my first time to tell him how I was going to do things in our new merged entity. Ooh, I was ready. We get in front of Bob Kosis, the CRO of Continuum, right before another meeting with Michael George, the CEO, and it was kind of an executive meet and greet thing. And he asked me, what are you guys going to do as you buy people? And I said, I'm going to buy them. I'm going to destroy them. I'm going to buy them on my costs, on my tools. I'm going to negotiate contracts so I can destroy contracts with third parties. And I can integrate them almost instantly. I can move them off their infrastructure. I can start in our infrastructure. I can protect them the same way. I can scale them up the same way. Tony Miller looked at me horrified. I mean, it was like literally losing your job without knowing you're losing your job, right? He looks at me horrified and says, no, that sounds like a hand grenade, Matt. No way. We go on. I get nervous. I'm going to be fired. And we go to the next meeting with Michael George, and Michael says, I'm going to tell you what I think you should do as an organization. I think you should buy these companies, assess them on your costs, fire the people that aren't going to make it, do things, cut them over immediately. I said, Michael, do you mean like a hand grenade? He says, no, I'd never say it like that. But anyways, the point was, if you're going to do M&A, have a strategy. Think about that strategy. Think about how you're going to manage the security of the people you're buying. Because when you buy them, it's your risk. And if they get popped, even if you've kept them in an island, and you're being sued, and every employee quits, and every client fires you, and everybody talks about you in the newspaper, you still suffer hard. I can tell you how. And we lost $3 million on that $1 million of an acquisition that was not yet integrated. So the point is, whichever way you're going to solve it, make sure you get them to a certain baseline posture.
Yeah, and a lot of times the problem is you may not even know the MSP's infrastructure that you're buying, right? Like
Yep, I have a story on that.
MSPs they like to play with things, and sometimes they play with things and don't turn it off when they're done, and it just lives out there forever.
Not even that. Slash and Grab, the central services manager, a good friend of mine at this large MSP, after Slash and Grab, I called him, and he said, I've already patched. I got it done in 8 minutes. Awesome. Great. He calls me 2 weeks later and says, we have an incident, and it's probably a breach. What are you talking about, Tim? Well, we bought an MSP that had sold a Screen Connect license to a downline client, and we didn't know it. And so we weren't managing it and patching it, and they got popped, and their whole Screen Connect instance got popped. So it can happen in other ways, too. Acquisitions when they don't even own it. The client owns it, and you don't know about it, right? And those kind of things. So.
I will reveal the edge of the information that I'm allowed to reveal. I can tell you that the Screen Connect incident that isn't the certificate one, but the nation state level one, the initial access involved an acquisition ConnectWise made in infrastructure they did not know existed.
Allegedly.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to go back to that enumeration of accounts, just with a real quick math problem. How many of you use first name and that's it for your email address domain?
Right now.
First name dot last name.
Not for
Raise your
long.
hands. First initial dot last name. Those can have big differences in math. When I need a spray to figure out each account, I have to do some web command, a curl, to every single one of those emails. If we were trying to enumerate 100% of something, and it's just first initial, last name, there's only 26 letters in the alphabet, right? So I only have to do 26 to get the full totality of all letters. And then there's things out there called word lists. These word lists have the top names in every state, in every major city, or at the country as a global aspect, or in Canada, or in Australia. And they give me the top first or top last names, depending which one I want to choose. So I can now just pick 5,000 of those top and 26 letters. That's only 130,000 tries to get a pretty good amount of your users.
It takes about 10, 15 minutes to run that number.
Yeah. This next one, if you top 5,000 first names, so if your first name dot last name, that's 5,000 times 5,000. And I have not enumerated the entire space. I've just taken the top 5,000 and the top 5,000, and I'm at 25 million records.
And that took a long time.
It took 12 hours.
And then the weird
hours.
MSP that had a mix of them, that was just weird.
Yeah.
Some were first initial last name, some were first dot last, and then there were a couple of first name only, and I just didn't know. Yeah.
But the point being is if you have the opportunity to first name, last name, you're probably going to have a much harder time enumerating that with these methodologies. I'm not going to say there's not other methodologies, but with these methodologies. Takeaway 5, consider ease of enumeration. What I mean by that is not just these email addresses, but try to think like an attacker. Try to think, what can they enumerate? Try to understand, like, if I do this, will it be easier? I'll tell a story about a fictitious MSP that does not exist and has not threatened to sue me for telling this story. There was an MSP somewhere in the United States. I'm making it way more geographically not noticeable. But do you know if you expose ESXi hosts to the internet and you name your A record ESXi 001, ESXi 002, ESXi 003, Horizon 001, Horizon 002, they're really easy to find. And if they have a vulnerability, they're really easy to pop because he has showed them to me. And I want to bring up something that John Kindervag, who's kind of one of the early guys talking about zero trust, said one day. He said, what's the difference between attack surface and protect surface? Does anybody know? What's the difference between an attack surface and protect surface? You have to protect everything you own. You don't have to choose to show it to people to attack. When you're talking about zero trust principles, you're reducing your attack surface by not showing it to people, by reducing its ability to be accessed, to be enumerated, right? If I don't have any domain name records that point to public internet and they're all behind a Cloudflare ZT tunnel, you can't get there unless you get to that tunnel. It gives me additional ways to stop enumeration and access and other things that would be out there. So wherever possible, consider enumeration as you build your infrastructure.
Yeah, there's it's the first initial last name or first name last name is a good example of that. But almost every one of these MSPs had dangling subdomains, right?
Yeah.
So
What's wrong with that?
another method I can take is it's pointed at an S3 bucket that doesn't exist anymore, or it's pointed at an IP address that I can get somehow.
Or some web service like MailChimp.
Yeah.
Now I can go sign up for a MailChimp account. It's already pointing there. I can send mail and it's accepted, right? So there's those type of things. Hanging subdomains. In fact, I had a subdomain takeover and they put up my video talking about subdomain takeovers, which I thought was quite delicious as the video that they replaced it with. It was awesome. Anyways, I digress. All right. Now the good news.
We didn't win.
Yeah, we did not fully compromise an MSP. There's some reasons for that. Part of it was time, just not enough time to continue down the path. The other part of it was, remember that 80% Microsoft Entra that I showed with no other attack surface? I could maybe compromise a host, but I wasn't getting the identity, right? It wasn't tied to AD anymore. I didn't have the same attack surface. And really when it came down to phishing, I wasn't ready to scale that and test that from an infrastructure perspective. The other side of it, we found a lot of things that if we had kept pulling on that thread, we would have destroyed several MSPs around the vulnerabilities on websites and stuff they had coded and exposed to us in IPs. Again, back to the 58 criticals or whatever it was.
There were places we probably could have won. There were lines that we decided not to cross. There were things we think we could have popped, but we couldn't conclusively determine that they were actually owned by the MSP and they weren't client resources. So we didn't.
There were a couple of human-machine interfaces exposed to the internet. And it very much appeared to be a client's stuff, not theirs. And it was like, I don't think
their host name.
This.
Yeah,
I think we'll leave this controller from Johnson Systems alone.
But what I think we proved here, and a couple of things came from this, right? Like all of these MSPs were safe from what I would call drive-by attacks.
100%.
Right? Like they're not going to get hit if they're with bulk spraying, right? You're going to have to do some work and some OSINT. You're going to have to target them. You're going to have to spend some effort there.
The other side of that, though, is if it's already exposed and vulnerable, it's probably already popped. If you already have infrastructure and it's already exposed and it has a 10, someone else has already automated through this.
This was Matt's hard-learned lesson with Hazizel.
They also sometimes will pop it and then monkey patch it, where now it's not patched, it shows it's vulnerable, but it just doesn't work. And they've put in things to stop it from functioning as a PC.
Or it's a
sometimes.
botnet, and they don't want another botnet to take it over,
That's right.
so they've basically killed the vulnerability.
It's capture the flag or king of the hill, I suppose,
Yep.
in this case. It's king of the hill in that regard, of which server I'm going to steal from you and use in the giant DDoS. This was my favorite. There was a SaaS MSSP that reached out to me on LinkedIn, and she said, "Hey, Matt, I'm guessing how I would, whatever it is, I think it's login.howI'dhack you. Don't go there, it's bad. Howidhackyou.com. Is this you based on a YouTube research?" Yes. If it's true, your scanner's got a few 100,000 419s. It was actually 418. But 418 is a joke RFC, or request for comment. And it's I'm a little teapot.
Hypertext coffee pot control protocol.
Yeah. So she sent me 165,000 coffee pot control protocol responses to my email request, or to my web address request. So it was quite delicious. But that's the only one that recognized that we were doing something. Of all of them, nobody had their guards up enough to go, hey, we got all this spraying traffic coming from one IP address. Now, I'm not saying that you should. There's going to be lots of attacks. You're going to be scanned and attacked by everything the second you put something on the internet. I'm simply saying if you're in a posture where you're receiving a pen test, it would be very nice to see if you have the capability of finding those things. If you had a targeted actor that was doing something over a long time like we were. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah, this one is
This was great.
Yeah. You want to go?
No,
I'll
you
go. Does anyone here know who Robert Chaffee is? He runs an MSP. He got popped in the Say It breach. He's our third board member of our charity. He's a great guy. We love him.
So chose to mess with him.
We decided he was the one we were gonna maybe attempt to try to fish. One of his interns had just connected with Matt on LinkedIn, and Matt sent a message, "Hey, we're trying to do something nice for Robert. Can you go to this website and log in to make sure the page works?"
I was trying to get him with a graph runner initially, or first with a phishing, and then he was going to go graph runner.
I think this kid practically deleted his LinkedIn account.
I think he did. Like, Robert calls me and he's like, "Matt, this kid is freaked out." I was like, "What?" He goes, this kid's response. What did he say? He said, "I saw you had a connection to this person. I unfollowed them, haven't replied. Just wanted to bring your attention." He literally tells me, he's like, "I think he's a hacker." It was so cute. But he did. And one of the things that I think is a takeaway, and Jason, if you want to close us out on this.
Yeah. Create a culture of saying something when something doesn't seem right. Right? Like there aren't a lot of MSPs. I don't know that my employees would have done that.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's a great simple thing you can do, right? If logs don't look right, like then question that. You know, if you should be able to explain things. If something is happening that you can't explain or doesn't seem right, you should probably investigate it.
Yeah, 100%. And that is a culture thing. You need to make it okay for people to say something, to say when something's a little weird, right? And that's actually a control. It's 14.6, train your users to recognize and report incidents. Okay, now what? We have some lessons for y'all. We want to just recap them, and then we'll have time for questions.
So, yeah, mergers and acquisitions are a mess. Like, you need to have a plan there, right? Like, as part of your due diligence, you should probably check to see if they've had acquisitions.
Hell yeah.
You should probably
look at their posture, how they dealt with them in the past, what kind of risk exists there. I absolutely advocate some kind of a risk assessment during due diligence, and if possible, do some of the earlier stages of OSINT enumeration and other things yourself.
If it's a big
I'd pay
acquisition,
for a pen test.
I might pay for a pen test.
And I actually got to talk about this. I don't remember where now, but it was some venture capital association. But I got to talk about this being able to, and several of these PE and VC people said they would use this to negotiate the price. They'd do a pen test and spend $10,000 and come in and say, I'm not paying you 3 times EBITDA, I'll pay you 2.7 times EBITDA now. I've got to fix all this stuff. I'm not doing that. Or we'll have a holdback, or we'll have so there's just things they would use to, and I would encourage you to do the same. They say, I'm going to have a posture, and if you have crap, I'm not paying you for good stuff.
If you're going to spend $1 million to buy an MSP and you're unwilling to spend $10,000 for a pen test, what are you doing?
Unless you're going to destroy it all.
Yeah.
Yeah, same. Oh, yeah, it's a home inspection when you're buying a house. Absolutely.
There you go.
And I was of the opinion that we were going to kill everything, so I was only enumerating to literally destroy everything. But if you're going to keep them, it matters more, right? Okay. Next, consider enumeration. We covered this earlier, but think about things that you do and how they might impact the enumeration for you. And we're going to add one here in a minute that'll help with that piece. Jason? Oh, this is me. Know what you have, right? I'm a CIS guy. I've put thousands and thousands of hours into CIS. I helped write 8.1's release. I'm part of the 9 commission, trying to come up with how we change 9 to be more real for today's environment. But knowing what you have is such a critical function. 1.1, know your assets. 2.1, know your software. 3.2, know your data. You could extend that into 5.x and 6.x and 15.1 for having your service providers. A lot of this being secure, it's just the frickin' basics, y'all. It's know what you have. That's it. You can make decisions after that. Every other decision you make is just an ignorance decision if you don't know what you have. And you're just guessing and poking in the dark, and you'll find yourself unable to defend yourself. And that's what it comes down to. You could be compliant by having a SOC 2 that scopes out the shit. I'm going to beat you to death with it. I don't care, right? Like at the end of the day, threat actors don't care if you put it in your SOC 2 if you're not protecting it.
And I've definitely seen plenty of, we have SOC 2, this is great, we passed this, and then I am brought in as a potential MSP, and the entire development environment is out of scope of the SOC, and the developers all have keys to production and local admin, and they're not managing the devices because developers are babies and they get mad if they can't install software. And they have access to production. Yeah, that's not great.
Identity is becoming king. How many of you believe that identity is king?
What, 80-ish%
80%
attacks start with identity now?
Oh, yeah.
It's
huge.
very high. It goes up every year.
I mean, if you think about it, how much of our stuff is tied to one identity like Microsoft or Google, and then it's extended into SaaS products by signing with OAuth or SAML or other things. I don't want to attack your machine. The machine is ephemeral. Wes, with Perch, the whole world from security has been looking at beeps and boops and then how they impact an asset. Beep, boop, something went off, asset problem. The asset doesn't matter as much anymore. The asset becomes quite ephemeral. The identity is what matters. The access to other things is what matters.
Well, and one of the nice things, right, so there's pluses and minuses to centralized identity, right? Like, well, now if I get into this one thing, I get into all these things. But
maybe
it only gives me one place that I need to control, right? So I can spend a lot more time and effort, right? Like, if you are not running EIDP2 as your MSP, maybe your clients don't all need it, but you have access to all of them. Yeah. So at the very least, anyone that has admin access should have EIDP2. So you can use things like risky sign-on analysis. You can use some of the more granular conditional access policies.
And really, if you go so far as to go to FIDO tokens for those that are of that higher risk, you will find yourself much harder to steal from. I can't steal a token in the middle. Now, I've gotten into a long argument about this, and I can prove it now. But I can steal it from your machine if I get there and still use it, even if you're using FIDO. But at least for all the attacks that don't already have to have a presence on your machine, which is most of these, then you're protected. So if you're not using FIDO, I would encourage you to find a way to use FIDO. You could also use passwordless modalities with the phone. That's still kind of FIDO. It's done on a FIDO protocol, but it is not necessarily exactly as good as a token.
Who here uses a password manager of some sort? Who here is storing passkeys in it? Don't do that.
Yeah, he tricked you there. It's not nice.
Yeah, no, don't do that. They lie. Like, there's an attestation indicating that you're a thing.
Attestation, like I press my button on the token is an attestation. I'm actually a human.
Yeah.
I'm actually real me. I'm actually holding this device.
The password manager lies and attests that something happened that it did not.
Well-written article about it. But yeah, anyways, FIDO is not being done right from password managers today. Okay.
And finally, one of the lessons that should come out of this is...
If any of these tools or techniques sounded unfamiliar to you,
yes, learn them.
You need to learn them.
Right? Like, I think Wes gave us, somebody gave us a really good analogy yesterday, may have been Zach, that if you're a sports team, you're not, oh, it was you. Okay. You're not going to try to teach.
If you were a defensive coach and you came in and said, you know what, this American football, I'm going to be a defensive coach. I'm not going to allow a single yard today as an NFL coach. Okay, well, they're an idiot. It's not going to happen. But then worse, what if they don't understand offense? They're like, you can throw? Wait, that brother can hand it off to somebody next to him and he can run? This is bullshit. Right? You wouldn't know how to defend. You would just be pretending to defend. And that's what we do as defenders today. I'll call myself out. Before I went down this path 7 years ago to learn red team and attack tools, I was just thinking I was fine because ignorance is bliss. But I really would think if you are going to say I'm defending or you're going down that path, I would encourage you to go learn how they're attacking. You'll understand it so much more kinesthetically. You'll understand what you need to do so much better. You don't have to be perfect. There's great things like tryhackme.com and Hack the Box that'll make it stupid simple for you. I've made this offer. Nobody's ever taken me up on this. If anybody reaches out to me, I'd love to buy you a month of Try Hack Me, as long as you promise you will use it enough to get through the month, one day at a time, doing one lesson every day. So reach out to me if you want to do that. But you should learn Red Team, or if you aren't going to be the one, someone in your organization should be. Someone should have the knowledge that I possess, that Jason possesses, so that you can just simply have guidance that means something.
Well, and once you start going through that, you start to learn some really low-hanging fruit, right? Who here runs a SIM or some sort of monitoring of things that are running on systems? Who here has an alert if somebody uses the command, who am I?
Yeah. Like, there's no legitimate use of who am I. Like, I already know who I am, damn it.
Users no one ever run who am I. Yeah. It's literally the first command threat actors run because they want to know what they have, right? Like there's a whole bunch of living off the land tools that aren't normally used. Dave Kennedy gives a really good example of they were attempting to pop a bank. They had done weeks and weeks of research, and they had figured out how they were going to do it, and they were in, and they were good. They were 5 hours into this engagement, and they get a call from the CISO. Did you guys do this thing on this device? And they're like, how the fuck did you catch us? As it turns out, they had made all these plans to get a low privilege user because they knew they could escalate. They knew a way. They had an unreleased ODA from Microsoft they were sitting on, so they knew if they could get in, they could escalate. Right? It wasn't patched yet. They knew it because they'd reported it. It wasn't fixed yet. They knew they could escalate.
Microsoft never does that.
They got it. They got the call. Well, as it turns out, they popped like Jimmy in finance. The security team of this company had created user profiles, and finance people never run PowerShell. So they had to monitor and alert that if a user that doesn't normally run PowerShell spawns a PowerShell process with the window manager or the Explorer as a parent process, and it wasn't a tool, they alerted on it because those users don't use PowerShell. There's no reason for them to ever be in it, and they caught them that way.
So learning red makes you better at blue. All right. We came to a conclusion as we were kind of wrapping up the 2 days we had planned for this, the 48-hour sprint that we had for the actual attack. We had started realizing that there's a lot of value in doing this, we think. There's a lot of value in providing this type of service, but most MSPs don't have the margins to spend $15,000 on a pen test. So they try to get by with a automated pen test that really only focuses
Maybe it's
on
$99.
vulnerabilities. Probably $94 now. It's got to be cheaper. It's like 6-minute abs. But expanding the charge, we realized we maybe were onto something here. One of the things I found when I was trying to knock over a couple of those high vulnerabilities, stuff that works in a lab, in TryHackMe or in Hack the Box or a lab you build, is set up for you to win. It's set up for you to succeed. It's set up to work the exact same way every time. No failures, no delineations, no changes. It's not how the real world works, right? The real world doesn't work that way. And what I found was that the skills that students are walking out of college going towards these pen testing careers aren't that valuable because they always win. They don't ever have to struggle. They don't get a real world experience. And as they try to build labs, they build them for the speed and efficacy and scale. What we realized was, what if we could tap that potential? What if we could find these seniors in their capstone projects, right? So anybody know capstone project? It's that last project you can do. It gives you credit hours. It's not necessarily tied to the direct course curricula. What if we could give them an MSP to pair them up with? What if we could have one MSP that they work with for all semester? They do enumeration. We teach them the content of how to do it. We give them the tool sets. We give them the capabilities. And then they provide you a report at the end. Everybody wins. They get the information. The student gets the learning. And you get better as an MSP without spending the money. We have a charity. Jason and I are two of the three primary board members of CyberRise Inc. It's a 501c3 organized out of Illinois that we run programs on.
We really need to fix the logo on this slide.
Eventually. It's actually supposed to be that logo down there, but I suck, so I haven't dealt with it. But ultimately, CyberRise is a charity that was born out of GTIA, CompTIA before that. We were running MSP 911. And GTIA is a 501c6, which means they're a trade organization. They can't provide direct services to their members under their charity side. We were providing direct services to their members under their charity side that competes with commercial entities. It wasn't allowed. So we spun out. We spun out as a 501c3. And Jason and I've sold a company a couple times. Robert's done pretty well in his own regard. Jason owns an MSP. We were thinking about legacy. How do we help move the needle forward? And this was a great vehicle for that. So now we have 3 programs that run under that. One of them is called Framework Maps. Is where we're trying to take CIS and map tools and products and services to their requisite CIS safeguards. The other one is MSP 911, the emergency response team. And the last one we're forming right now, we're going to be starting with Syracuse and the University of Toledo to start a capstone program. And the way this would work is a student signs on, they get assigned an MSP, we write the curricula ahead of time that they're going to be using, and then at the end of it, the pen testing companies that would like to hire them will be grading their papers. Right? So when they turn in their penetration testing report, they'll be judged by Black Hills. We've got TCM signed on. Both of those are willing to do some of those judgments for us. So we're going to be starting that probably first of next year. It would be when that finally launches with enough curricula to move forward. So if you would like to follow us, we have a Patreon that's free, or you can help support the cause, CyberRise Inc. and so on Patreon.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways. We'll make the agreement somewhat less egregious. We'll scope it, right? Like we don't want to, we want to give them a lot of latitude, which is going to mean we need to know what your assets actually are. We're going to want all of them though.
Yeah, because what we did in our version, we didn't ask you. We just made our own determination. That's too risky. So the college kids will be forced to kind of work back and forth with you of, hey, this A record, is this yours? And that'll help us with making sure we're not attacking stuff that could get us in trouble. And one of the challenges is universities don't want to do this. It's too risky, right? Universities won't hold this paper and hold this risk. It's too risky. That's why they build labs. So we are a risk vehicle at the end of the day. I think our insurance is our only cost right now. Yes. So it's pretty expensive. But anyways, we will be providing programs that help serve underserved. There's a woman by the name of Wendy Nather. You should look her up. I think she's at 1Password as a researcher now, but she wrote a white paper on below the cybersecurity poverty line. And she speaks about the conditions we live in and that we as SMBs live under the poverty line. Capabilities, expertise, right? All of those things combined. So she's a great person to look up. I don't know why I got down that track. We are at the point for questions.
Yes.
Any questions? Yes, sir. But basically the question was, why was indemnification not the first advice from an attorney? You mean from your service agreements and things of that nature? A, you can't indemnify against gross negligence, first off. You just can't. If I can prove gross negligence that you did and got popped and caused me to be popped, I know that for a fact, unfortunately. So that's the first thing. I don't disagree with you.
Unless
you
you're incorporated in
Delaware.
Delaware.
Indemnifications, you should. We were, actually. You should hold... you should definitely have all the indemnifications, very good, actual written in your service level agreements or in your legal agreements with your clients. You should definitely have those indemnifications. So great call out. I would agree 100%. Just remember, they don't protect you from the things that you completely failed at.
You also need to educate your clients that you are not their insurance. Like your insurance exists as a vessel to cover you. Yeah. If you have an incident, it will almost certainly not cover your client's costs, right?
Unless
you may get some of
it,
right? But they're gonna have a really bad time if they think that your insurance is covering them.
Our cyber policy paid our end clients $280,000 in settlements, just in the first little group. So some of it was paid, but $1 million,
not a lot.
$1 million was not.
No.
Yeah. So, I like the question though, because I think it helps that understanding of what should I be doing, but. The other thing is, how many of you are using any type of a shared responsibility matrix or an SRM? One? Okay. When you start getting into these legal agreements, you're often saying, if it's not written here, I don't do it. That gets real ambiguous, right? I'm going to patch. Hey, can you? What if they leave all the machines offline? What if they don't pay for the updates? Like, that's on their side of the house. So I would encourage you to think about that legal agreement a little broader and think more down shared responsibility and defining what are those things I'm going to do. And one of those would be, I'm not doing incident response. Well, if you have an incident, we're going to hire somebody. That might be something you exclude from your contract for their aspects.
And you're usually not able to pull liability to zero.
Yeah.
You can indemnify, but you're still going to have some liability. There's a reason we did $100 because it is generally not accepted. A legal agreement would get thrown out if we accepted no liability.
Yeah. So a lot of contracts you'll see say up to the money you've spent with me, depending on your state, things of that nature, which can still hurt, right? I mean, if they've paid the client for 5 years and they want to sue you for everything you spent, which is some of my cases that we dealt with. It was a big number. They didn't get that number, but it was a big number.
Well, our contract has a 1-year look back, right? Like, so our maximum liability is what you've paid me in the
And your
following
state
12
may
months.
vary, right?
Yep.
Depending where you're at. We were
Yeah,
in New York too.
so yes, we don't go there because that's table stakes. We assume that most MSPs at this point have pretty good MSAs. That wasn't probably the case 4 years ago, but I don't think you can just try to indemnify yourself and then just put your head in the sand and pretend everything's fine.
Yeah.
Because you're legally protected. It's probably not going to work.
And going back to that, the MSP we bought, Voldemort, we actually found they had a ransom back in February of 2019 and another ransom back in August of 2018 during the Kaseya first vulnerability. They just wiped and reloaded each time from backup. Threat actor had an account, so they just kept coming back in and treating them like a piggy bank. But we were able to go after them for gross negligence afterwards, right? So we were able to go back against their indemnification policy for gross negligence. Yeah. Yes, sir.
What kind of checks do you recommend when onboarding a client as an MSP, not buying an MS?
That gets different because the
Yeah.
risk is more theirs than yours, right? Just if we're thinking about where the risk lies. So when you're onboarding a client, there's way more at play there. I think in my mind, we had things where if there were certain things we found, we would not onboard them, right? The way we treated it was we did an assessment before we actually brought them on, and then we had a project quote before they came on.
We did
And
the same
if you didn't want to do the project quote, I'm not taking your stupid risk.
As part of our onboarding, there's remediation. We run, I run Nessus typically. Nessus
I've seen
Pro.
some of them.
Yeah, we run. I just started using Prowler to do 365 assessment.
Yep. There's an open source version of Prowler too.
Yeah, we spend. I mean, we lead with a paid assessment, and we spend probably 20 hours poking around in your environment to figure out what we need to clean up before we'll take you on as a client. Any of the open source or any of the paid vulnerability scanning tools are good for that, right? So you're going to want to run some sort of vulnerability scan. You're going to want to do some sort of baseline assessment. There are multiple tools to do it of their cloud environment if it exists.
Now, Jason might throw me off this stage, but this might be an appropriate place for your $99 pen test.
Yes.
Where you now have some
Just don't call it a
enumeration
pen test.
externally and internal enumeration. They're decent enough at getting you data you might want.
It's a $99 vulnerability scan because essentially it's just open res.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
On the heels of that, if the small MSP that is getting bought does get their house in order,
Yeah.
and then an M&A occurs, wouldn't that then also allow them to say to the buyer, there's less cleanup, therefore my price?
Well,
That would be I think that would be an interesting question for somebody like service leadership, right? Like,
my first response would be, good for you for doing table stakes.
yeah.
I mean, I hate saying that, but that's...
Well,
I mean,
but there is no correlation between size and security or maturity at all.
But what I mean is, what I meant by that quip is, like, if somebody came to me and said, hey, look, I have my house in order. I know my assets. I know where things are. I've got good protection. It's like, fucking great. That's your basic stakes that you should have to exist and do this for a living.
Evergreen guys running around here somewhere, not Zach,
down.
the other one. Is he here still?
Second, where's Zach? He left.
No, Zach left.
But anyways, but back to the spirit of your question, I would definitely, in my mind, buy that company when I might not buy the other company. Unless, and this is where I say it depends, if my goal was to really literally get rid of everything they have, because that's what I did. I just went to ConnectWise and to Datto and to Kaseya and said, how about we negotiate a price that when I buy somebody, I don't care how low their contract is or how high their contract is, let me terminate it and take my price. And so now I was able to assess them on that price, my price. I didn't care what their price was. I didn't care about their financials based on that price. I might actually be more profitable as I buy them. And my entire goal was we had a 90-day track with 170-something pages of stuff we had to do to take it from day one to they don't exist anymore in any other way but us. So if I was that way, I don't know that I'd care what the posture was because I'm going to kill it all anyway. Does that make sense? Why I say it's a little bit depends, the best security answer in the world. Anybody else? Yes, sir?
How's the CISA penetration test that they offer?
I haven't had anybody use it,
I
and I
haven't
don't
either.
think they... Yeah, it's a Vaughn scan. I was like, I didn't think it was a pen test. They don't dedicate humans. I'll just tackle this. The difference between a pen test and a vulnerability scan is a pen test is a human heartbeat that is using the brain and ingenuity to test shit in ways they can test it to get in.
And this has been a large argument I've had with vendors in our space because if you look at, there is government definition, at least one of those contracts that says a penetration test is performed by a skilled human, right?
Yep.
Like,
And it's usually hours-based,
Yeah.
not results-based,
Yep.
not assets-based. It's I have 80 hours to do this or 40 hours to do
it's usually like a 2+2, right? So a 2+2 engagement would be you get 2 weeks of pen testing and then 2 days to write the report, and that's like it's time boxed always. from somebody like Trusted Sec, that would be like a $28,000 engagement.
Yep. Yes, sir. Yeah, you left eye. Wherever the Oakley's pointing. My eye's pointing two different directions. Yeah.
I'll take this.
Yeah.
Advice if you're getting a red team pen test, their goal is to win. So if you have ways you know they can win, fix them before you spend the money, because they will use those ways, and then your report will be really boring because they will win ways that you knew they could win.
And red team pen test gets blurred a lot, right? In that a pen test in prior to red team engagement would be a lot of times bringing a machine in that's classified just like the other machines and putting an agent on it. And now I can test the tools, and I'll run this test, and I'll run that test, and I'll run this test, and I'll run that test. Whereas a red team is, I just need to win. That's my only objective, is to win. So I know that I muddy them in my own head in the difference. But to his point, when you go red team, I'm not just testing and saying failed, passed. I just need to get to DA or domain admin or global admin or whatever it might be in that case. And so to Jason's point, it'd be like asking some very skilled guy that breaks into houses or gal that breaks into houses to come break into your house when you haven't set the alarm, you haven't locked the door, you haven't got the dog out of the kennel, you don't have the shotgun loaded, you don't have they just don't. They're going to find the ways. But if you lock all the doors and the windows and you've tested and checked them and you know your SOC team's responding and such, now it's time to do a red team because they'll find the things you wouldn't find. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. I would also encourage probably a purple team exercise.
Yep.
Where you're now bringing the blue team that knows about the infrastructure, what's there, how it's set up, what we're seeing. The difference between red and purple is red tests, can I win? Purple tests, what did we detect? Right? So can I win would have some byproduct of what we detected, but not the same as if you're literally sitting there with your SOC team and going, hey, I want you to tell me what you see, and then they test something or do some technique and then you don't see it, and now you're like, nah, bro, that's a problem. That's a gap.
Yeah.
So I like purple team in that regard, but yeah.
Ollie, one more maybe?
We got one more maybe? All right. Yeah, go ahead, Wes. Okay, what is deception and where would you use it and how does it apply in this case? I had 170 employees that were reporting to me under my security team internally. Of those 170, at any given time, one jackass in Dallas is going to be compromised. It's just the way it works, and it's always Dallas. I don't know why. But the point is, I really was. But anyways, somebody's going to be compromised. And so I had a term that I used to tell my internal employees of live compromised. Our goal was to live compromised, meaning how can I find ways to know when I'm compromised faster? And there's a real story about this. Dragos is an MSP that supports industrial control systems, power systems, those type of things. They had an employee hired that had already been compromised in his personal Google account when they delivered him his credentials. So that threat actor logged in for the first time as that employee, right? He beat the employee to logging in. The only reason they caught him is they had done some deception techniques or canaries. And that did make our first talk, Wes, so thank you for reminding us of that. Those canaries are things that, what was a canary in a coal mine? Anybody, what's a canary in a coal mine? What do they do? How do they detect? They die first, and they're not that valuable, right? A canary's cheap. I can get lots of canaries, right? We can send a monkey into space. So the point is, but humans are not. We love humans for some reason. They really matter to us. So the point is that canaries are meant to die first so that you know something's bad, wrong. We need to get out of this mine because we're going to die of gas if we don't move. So what deception is putting up things that people can find that will kill them or that will let me know they're there, right? And in the case of Dragos, they put up applications that this user didn't really have access to in their portal. So as they clicked on them and got denied several times subsequently, as they're enumerating, they were able to alert upon it and lock out the account. Those are things that are living compromised. And wherever possible, I'd encourage you to do that. Jason actually has a free one that he can kind of share with you, too, of canaries that you can put inside your systems.
Canarytokens.org, I believe it is. Yeah.
Canarytokens.org is fun.
You can, there's all sorts of them. There's fake credit card numbers that will alert you if they were used.
And
there's AWS credentials that will alert you if they're ever accessed, right? It's a cheap, easy way for deception. A lot of the SIM vendors now support running honeypots. Those are great. I want to stand up a larger honeypot infrastructure. I think I'm going to start doing it at clients.
And in thinking about defensive in football again, my job isn't to stop every yard. It's to stop the next set of downs before I get to a touchdown. And when you think about this, getting in the door may not be the win. The win's getting the data. Let's find them first. Let's limit their access. Let's reduce what they have access to. The United States Navy did this, actually, in Huntsville. Remember the Littoral Warship, or LTS, or the Littoral Warship? I think it was that. The Littoral Warship, when it was being built, China was still stealing a lot from us. Still are. But this was right after the F-35 program had been stolen from us, right after the announcement of their new jumbo jet that had been stolen from us. Like, this is right in the middle of that time frame. And what was interesting is the feds wanted to, the NSA, I think it was, wanted to put fake copies of warship designs in their systems that would not work, that would cost trillions of dollars to build, that would just, or billions of dollars to build, that just wouldn't work. They would actually sink and kill someone. And they actually had to wrestle with this existentially. They had to get permission internally from the attorneys that protect them, because they're like, what if we kill someone? We're like, they stole the ship, you jackass. Who cares? But that was really the problem. So deception is probably more effective, in my opinion, because what you're trying to do with that is reduce blast radius. Blast radius is how big is the boom. If I can make it smaller, less bodies are dead, less missing arms, right? Things like that. And deception techniques are great for blast radius
That
reduction.
being said, deception techniques tend to be noisy, right? So there is a fine balancing act between dealing with the noise, like you need to get the signal to noise ratio.
Folder. Let's check into these PDFs.
If anyone here does ransomware detection, you have that one dumb user that renames a folder, and then suddenly their machine gets isolated. It's the same thing at scale with more
Played that
detection
football
stuff.
game. All right. Thank you all so much for having us. We appreciate it. And go and be safer. Thank you.